we have to read. It's almost a one-page para. So let's read it. Who will read today? Tarika, you have the text with you?
Yes.
Okay, will you read?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
It is the spiritual nature of the equality enjoined, high and universal in its character and comprehension, which gives its distinctive note to the teaching of the Gita in this matter. For otherwise, the mere teaching of equality in itself as the most desirable status of the mind, feelings, and temperament in which we rise superior to human weakness is by no means peculiar to the Gita. Equality has always been held up to admiration as the philosophic ideal and the characteristic temperament of the sages. The Gita takes up indeed this philosophic ideal, but carries it far beyond into a higher region where we find ourselves breathing a larger and purer air. The stoic poise, the philosophic poise of the soul, are only its first and second of ascension out of the whirl of the passions and the tossings of desire to a serenity and bliss, not of the gods, but of the divine himself in his supreme self mastery. The Stoic equality, making character its pivot, founds itself upon self mastery by austere endurance. The happier and serener philosophic equality prefers self mastery by knowledge, by detachment, by a high intellectual indifference seated above the disturbances to which our nature is prone. Udasinavat asinaha, as the Gita expresses it. There is also the religious or Christian equality, which is a perpetual kneeling or a prostrate resignation and submission to the will of God. These are the three steps and means towards divine peace: heroic endurance, sage indifference, pious resignation, titiksha, udasinata, udasina, udasinatamasa, or nati. The Gita takes them all in its large synthetic manner and weaves them into its upward soul movement. But it gives to each a profounder root, a larger outlook, a more universal and transcendent significance. For to each it gives the values of the spirit, its power of spiritual being beyond the strain of character, beyond the difficult poise of the understanding, beyond the stress of the emotions.
So, Chandra is saying that the idea of samatha is common, very common. It's not at all uncommon. It is all the yogas, they know that it is the most important thing, the equality of soul. But he's saying that the Gita takes it to another level. And remember, the Gita speaks of three levels. We'll go into a little detail in this and we'll see what the three steps are. So, the Gita takes it to the third level. Okay, the Gita very clearly speaks of three levels. Okay, if you remember, we will repeat so that it gets entrenched in our minds. The first is the Kshara Purusha. The Kshara Purusha is when the soul is in ignorance, it is seeing the multiplicity and not seeing the oneness of things. That's our normal condition of humanity. We are, when outward touches come from the physical world, people insult us, or there is a strong wind that comes, or a storm, or even vital things and thoughts which we don't like, we are affected. We are affected very badly. Okay, when our desires also are not satisfied, we get affected. So the first is this condition where there is no equality at all. The second is where equality comes, that's it. Akshara Purusha. Akshara Purusha is level 2 of the spiritual planes of consciousness, where you become the soul and not the body, mind, life. And the soul, you become a witness and you are looking down and you are seated above. Udasina. Udasina. Okay? Udasina. Seated above. It's like you are seated above and watching all that's going on below without being affected. Okay? But the Gita takes it to the third level. That's the whole thing. It goes right up to Purushottama, the third level. And the Purushottama corresponds to suppose the supramental benefit, truth consciousness. So this is what we are going to see. I just gave you a brief summary of what he's saying here, and we will go through each sentence and see what he's saying. It is the spiritual nature of the equality enjoined, high and universal in its character and comprehension, which gives its distinctive note to the teaching of the Gita in this manner. In this matter. Universal, all the yogas, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, they do go to that level. Of course, equality is most important in the Karma Yoga. Okay. So anyway, so this is the spiritual nature, but it goes even beyond the spiritual nature. For otherwise, the mere teaching of equality in itself as the most desirable status of the mind, feelings and temperament in which we rise superior to human weakness is by no means peculiar to the Gita. Okay? Even ordinary people, even if they are not even spiritual things, you know very well that when you are calm and quiet, your judgment is much better. Okay? So it's not actually the concept of samatha, but calm down. And if you are excited, your judgment is always wrong. It is always colored heavily by your emotions. So that's what Swami is saying. It's very common. Okay? But the philosophical ideal of equality is taken up by the Gita. So he says, I have to read one more sentence. Equality has always been held up to admiration as a philosophic ideal and the characteristic temperament of the sages. He is referring here in a certain way to the stoicism of the Greeks. The Greeks they had the concept of stoicism. Learn to bear the shocks of life without being affected. That is stoicism. Okay? So,
Ranganath,
yes.
one question.
Yeah.
In Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, this samatha comes as a byproduct, right? I mean,
you could say that, yes.
Yes, equality comes as a byproduct. I mean, yes. It's not.
It sounds very reasonable to say that, yes.
Because in Karma Yoga, you need to work hard for it. But in
exactly. Because in the Karma Yoga, you are open to the universe, you are open to the world. Whereas in Bhakti Yoga and Jnana Yoga, you are going away from the world. And so it's not affecting you so much. Of course, it affects you, but that's not your ideal. The ideal is to rise above your body mind life. Quite right. I think you can say that. Of course, it comes automatically by itself in the others also. So, I go to the next sentence. What he's saying here, equality has always been held up to admiration as a philosophic ideal. Since he mentioned philosophic ideal, you have to go back to the Greek Stoicism. 300 BC, okay? At that time when Greece was at its absolute highest level of civilization, about 300 BC. Any number of philosophers, scientists, so many. Okay? So that's what he's talking about. I forget the name of the philosopher who enunciated Stoicism. Just 1 minute, I'll tell you. Stoicism. Nowadays my memory is failing. Stoicism. Stoicism.
By Zeno of Citium.
What did you say?
Zeno of Citium or Aristotle?
No, not Aristotle. No. I'll leave it. I'll tell you afterwards. Now, I have to get the origin. Okay. It's,
Ranganath,
yes.
that question in which Pallavi asked, in Gyan Yoga also, we will get Samatha only after we have identified with the self, not
I
before
don't
that.
think, yeah, you could say that in a very general way. But as we were discussing yesterday, all these things are not absolute rules. Okay? Even
No, what my question is that can we get Samta, actual Samta means, without being identified with the self? That is my question.
oh, acha, okay, very clear. I don't think so. So long
That
as
is
you're
all I wanted
I
to
don't
ask.
think so. So long as you're identified with your body, mind, life, the attempt at samatha is a mental effort. It's a mental effort. And even if it is a psychic effort, it is never perfect. That is sure. And if the
Okay.
psyche comes forward, certainly there's an attempt at being equal to everything, but you are not successful. It's only when you detach yourself from the body, mind, life that it becomes possible. That is sure. Because if you're
That is what I.
identified with your body, mind, life and it's always being bombarded by inputs from the physical world, how will you be equal? You can't be equal. That's the nature of the body, mind, life. Your question is a very clear one, and the answer also is very clear. I don't think you can get equality. It's a mental effort. You can succeed to a certain extent, but certainly not by control. No? If you are identified with your body, mind, life, I don't let my desires affect me. Okay, and
Exactly.
it's a whole discussion. What happens, but that you try to control it, but control is not the actual thing. That is sure. Your equality is almost perfect only when you go to the spiritual level of the self. Yes, I think so.
Okay. Thank you, Ranganath.
Yeah, I think so. All right, we go to the next one. So he's talking of um, the Stoicism. Okay, the Gita takes up this philosophical ideal, but carries it far beyond into the higher region where we find ourselves breathing a larger and purer air. There you are, very clearly he's telling you. The Gita takes up into this philosophical ideal, but carries it far beyond into a higher region where we find ourselves breathing a larger and purer air. Sembro is not defining how high or higher region, which one it is, because as you keep going higher and higher, even in the spiritual planes of consciousness, the equality becomes more and more perfect. And but there is one thing, the third one, in the equality of the self, you are affected neither by the pleasure nor by the pain. But when you go to the third level, this equality turns itself into a magnificent enjoyment of everything, even those things which you did not like earlier. That's why Srimdo says equality can be negative in a sense. Okay, the liberation of the soul in the spiritual planes of consciousness can be considered negative because you are not enjoying, you are only at peace and freedom, but not enjoyment. And this is not absolutely a rule again, because there are some who will get enjoyment also, and even power. Power also comes, but not to the extent that it will come at a higher level. It's only small quantities of ananda and power that you can have, not as you can have in the third level of the Purushottama. The stoic poise, the philosophic poise of the soul, are only its first and second types of ascension out of the world of the passions and the tossings of desire to a serenity and bliss, not of the gods, but of the divine himself in his supreme self-mastery. So, very clearly, he has told you first and second step. So, he is anticipating the third step, and he has told you also, but in language which we have to interpret. Okay? And the language is very clear. The first level is the tossings of desire and the whirl of passions. The second step is that of the gods. Now, very clearly, the gods are the overmind level. But of the divine himself is the third level. Okay? The divine himself is Satchidananda. Okay? So, he has told you very clearly that the equality In the second level is the spiritual planes of consciousness, higher mind, elevated mind, intuitive mind, over mind. Because of gods live in the over mind. Okay. So he's using different language, but if you know what he means by the over gods, then very clear. But of the divine himself, in his supreme self-mastery. That's the third level of the Gita. Okay. Very clear. Then he says, the stoic equality, making character its pivot, founds itself upon self-mastery by austere endurance. Austere, very austere means very, you deprive yourself of all pleasures and you have a very, you do intense tapasya for that. Okay. The happier and serener philosophic equality prefers self-mastery by knowledge, by detachment, by higher intellectual indifference, seated above the disturbance to which our nature is prone. Udasinavat asina. Udasinavat ud asina. Seated above. Okay. Like as though you are. What means as though you are seated above? Okay, that's what the Gita says. As the Gita expresses it. There is another also in the Gita, it says Kutastha. Kuta is a summit. And Stha means you are standing there on the summit. Okay. So the Udasinavat and also Kutastha. They are the two words used in the Gita. Seated on the summit. Okay. So, there is also the religious or Christian equality, which is a perpetual kneeling or a prostrate resignation and submission to the will of God. Okay. And it is very interesting because it's Christian, because in the West, you are taught to be an individual. Don't depend on others. Assert your own individuality. So, in the Christian religion, it's a huge thing to surrender yourself to somebody else. In a normal culture of Europe, you never surrender yourself to anybody. You assert your own independence and your own judgment and your own ideas. So in Christianity, it's a very big thing. Perpetual kneeling or a Christian equality, which is a perpetual kneeling or a prostrate resignation and submission to the will of God. Only you don't know what the will of God is. So there can be a lot of misinterpretations. These are the three steps and means towards divine peace, heroic endurance, sage indifference, pious resignation. These are the three terms which he will expand. Okay. Titiksha, udasinata, namas or nothing. So titiksha is the endurance. Okay. You develop the capacity of enduring the impacts of the physical world. Sometimes they hurt, sometimes they give you pleasure. But you have to be indifferent to both. That's the first one. You can't have equality at this level. You can have equality when you are udasina. You go to the self, then you have udasina. So very clearly, Archanaji's question is being answered here, very clearly. You go to the spiritual plane of consciousness, you are seated above. Seated above implies you are not in your body-mind life. Okay? So then you can have. But the third level is namas. Namas is surrender to the divine. He has used here the Christian term, but it is the real one. You become an absolute instrument of the divine. Okay? He will do whatever he wants with you. And that's why you will enjoy everything. So that's the third level. 3 levels he has spoken of. The Gita takes them all in its large synthetic manner and weaves them into its upward soul movement, but it gives to each a profounder root, a larger outlook, a more universal and transcendent significance. For to each, it gives the values of the spirit, its power of spiritual being beyond the strain of character. When the character belongs to the body-mind life, and there is always a strain there. Okay? Beyond the difficult points of the understanding. So, the understanding is the knowledge aspect, which I said earlier. So, the difficult points of the understanding is the self, beyond the stress of the emotions. Both of these are in the second level, but it takes it to the third level, the Gita. Okay, so we read the next para. The ordinary human soul takes a pleasure. So, let's read.
Ranganath,
Yeah.
Ranganath, one question. This idea of Purushottama, the idea of Purushottama is only from in Gita, or previously also it was there.
It is, no, it is there, but not in a philosophic sense. In the Upanishads also it is there. But Sri Aurobindo says very clearly that there is no clear distinction of the three levels. In the Upanishads also it is there, but they don't make a very clear distinction. Okay, so it is there earlier. Purushottama and the Paramatman, all these are words used there also.
Hmm.
Ishvara
I'm not able
also.
to hear.
It's only in the Gita that there is a very clear definition.
Okay.
Yeah. So we read the next one. Who will read? Shilpa? You have not read for a long time.
Rangada,
Yes, yes, tell me.
Dada, one just simple question. Namas or
Able to hear.
NATI Nati? Or Nati, which term is this, Dada? NATI? Namas or Nati?
Same thing. Namas is it bowing down. Nam is the root. Nam is the root to bow down, to bend down. And Nati also is the same. Nati, Nata is the, the past participle.
Oh, got it. Got
It's
it.
a past
Got it.
participle. We used to have an Italian man who used to run Oroshika. His name was Nata. One who is surrendered.
Nati. Okay, got it. Thanks.
Nati is a noun. Nata is
We
the
use it.
is a past participle. Nata.
We use it as Natamastaka, no?
yeah,
Yes,
Natmastak
that's
is
right. Yes. Actually, with your head. Okay, Shirasa, Nata. That also is. Because it can be an attitude.
I'm
No?
not able to hear properly. Is everybody
Yes, we all can hear Shilpa. See your connection. Rangada,
Yes. Tell me.
yeah, what I was in the Upanishad and Ved, maybe because the Sakar or the person form of the absolute has not been insisted on. So that's why probably Purushottam is so much insisted after in the Gita and after that.
Yes.
There the impersonality has been more stressed, you can say. Can we say?
Yeah. Yeah, you could say that. Okay. So let's read the next one. The ordinary human soul. So, Shilpa, you have the text with you? Shilpa is not there. She was there just now.
She's there, but I think she's having problem with her internet because she was saying I can't hear.
Ah, okay. Oh, yeah. So, somebody else has to read. Pallavi, you'll read?
Yes, Rangada.
Okay, go ahead. The ordinary human soul.
The ordinary human soul takes a pleasure in the customary disturbances of its nature life. It is because it has this pleasure and because having it, it gives a sanction to the troubled play of the lower nature that the play continues perpetually. For the Prakriti does nothing except for the pleasure and with the sanction of its lover and enjoyer, the Purusha. We do not recognize this truth because under the actual stroke of the adverse disturbance, smitten by grief, pain, discomfort, misfortune, failure, defeat, blame, dishonor, the mind shrinks back from the blow while it leaps eagerly to the embrace of the opposite and pleasurable disturbances. Joy, pleasure, satisfaction of all kinds, prosperity, success, victory, glory, praise. But this does not alter the truth of the soul's pleasure in life, which remains constant behind the dualities of the mind. The warrior does not feel physical pleasure in his wounds or find mental satisfaction in his defeats, but he has a complete delight in the Godhead of battle, which brings to him defeat and wounds as well as the joy of victory, and he accepts the chances of the former and the hope of the latter as part of the mingled weft of war, the thing which the delight in him pursues. Even wounds bring him a joy and pride in memory, complete when the pain of them has passed, but often enough present even while it is there and actually fed by the pain. Defeat keeps him the joy and pride of indomitable resistance to a superior adversary, or if he is of a baser kind, the passions of hatred and revenge, which also have their darker and crueler pleasures. So it is with the pleasure of the soul in the normal play of our life.
Now, there's a very interesting para. He is describing to you how, at the lower level, normally human beings enjoy everything. Okay, so because if the drama, if there is only pleasure, there will be no drama. Okay, it's a very interesting thing. Your pleasure increases very much when you appreciate your pleasure when there is the opposite. Okay. Okay. There are many, many ways of expressing this. Okay. I'll tell you some very light things also, which will, in contrast, this is the thing that you enjoy. That's why in the lower level, people don't. If you have only pleasure and there is no difficulty or anything, you will find life boring. Okay, because it's only one monotone scene. So the drama of life comes in when there is ups and downs. There is also a negative and there is positive. We can give many examples of that. One of the most ordinary and ridiculous example of this is a man goes to a. I read this when I was at school, so I found it funny then, but there's a truth in it. A man goes to a shoe shop, okay, and he is sitting and he tells the man, he gets him the right size. And he says, no, I don't want the right size. I want a slightly smaller size than my foot. Then the shopkeeper asks him, why? Why do you want a smaller one? He says, because when I wear it, it is so tight that it hurts. And when I remove it, then I get the pleasure. So this is a very idiotic way of putting it, but that's it. I also told you about the of Jogolda. Okay, he had corns on his feet, and I told him that you can easily get rid of these corns. He said, "Na bhai, thak," because it reminds me of the divine. Okay, so negative things also you can enjoy in a certain interesting manner. I'll give you a third example which also struck me when I was there. You have heard of Prapatti, no? Prapatti is the one, he was a philosophy teacher, he used to be our philosophy teacher. He was the one who introduced Mother and Srimad to Orissa. And Orissa is the only state where Mother and Srimad are accepted to such a large extent. Okay? It's fantastic. 200, 300 schools, interior schools. So he was the one who used to go and spread Mother and Srimad's teachings. So in one meeting, some people from the audience told him, you are talking about peace and all these things, okay? But we have got so many family problems, money problems, anxieties, so many things we have. How can we do all this, what you are telling us to do? So he told them, you can bless your lucky stars, consider yourself fortunate that you have these, these negative things, okay? So again, we come back to the same thing. Same is explaining that in a very interesting manner and very sophisticated manner, but the truth is there very much. This is what we do enjoy, and if we don't have sorrow, then our delight will not be as intense as it would be. Okay, that's what Srimad is explaining, and also he's giving a very interesting example of the warrior, who that we will see. It's a very interesting discussion on the warrior also. Okay, so because I had a problem with Srimad's translation, okay, and we'll come to that when we do this paragraph. I'm reading the paragraph. The ordinary human soul, the average human being, okay, takes a pleasure in the customary disturbances of its natural life. Very clear statement. Okay. If he does not take the customary disturbance, he does not take, then he will not get the full enjoyment of the positive side. Okay. It is because it has its pleasure, and because having it, it gives a sanction to the troubled play of the lower nature, that the play continues perpetually. So he is wanting both actually. For the Prakriti does nothing except for the pleasure and with the sanction of his lover and enjoyer, the Purusha. So this is again He is raising it to a philosophical concept. The Prakriti is doing everything only for the pleasure of the Purusha. And so whatever Prakriti is doing, causing pain and causing pleasure, it is for the Purusha's pleasure. And Purusha is the consciousness. So when you are in the right consciousness, you will enjoy everything. You will enjoy the pain as well as the pleasure. But that's not at our level, but there is a shadow of that enjoyment of the pain in a very perverse manner. It's a distortion, but it is there. Now, Srila is saying we do not recognize this truth because under the actual stroke of the adverse disturbance, now Srila is giving very, very detailed analysis, and you will see very carefully, you will see how this grief can come from so many sources. Smitten by grief, pain, discomfort, misfortune, failure, defeat, blame, dishonor. Okay? All these things, the source will be different. Okay? So it can be, all these things are also coming in. That's why Srimad goes to such a great extent. Okay? The mind shrinks back from the blow, while it leaps eagerly to the embrace of the opposite and pleasurable disturbances. Note the interesting word again, pleasurable disturbance. Okay? Why does he say that? We'll discuss that. Joy, pleasure, satisfaction of all kinds, prosperity, success, victory, glory, praise. So what does it mean by pleasurable disturbance? Because when there is absolute equality, it is like a lake which is absolutely without any waves. Okay? Now, if there is something that disturbs it, that disturbance is caused by pain, but it is also caused by pleasure. Is it not? When pleasure comes, you get excited. And the excitement is a disturbance. So that is the thing. Everything disturbs you. Pleasure also disturbs you, as well as pain disturbs you. That is the reason why equality means you have to be above both. There should be no disturbance at all. The substance of your being must be absolutely still and calm and not be affected by anything. That is why in the beginning you have to be above pleasure and above also pain, both. Okay? So, very interesting sentence, phrase, pleasurable disturbance. And there comes, when joy comes, you are not in the normal consciousness. There is a disturbance. Sometimes it becomes so intense that you start even, have you seen how in Wimbledon, when someone wins the title, what happens to them? Some people start jumping and some people will simply start crying. Okay. So success also can give you crying. You are so disturbed. So, or you start celebrating. Okay. So, there is nothing, neither this should be there, nor that should be there. So that also is telling you how that satisfaction can come. It comes from prosperity, success, victory, glory, praise. But this does not alter the truth of the soul's pleasure in life, which remains constant behind the duality of the mind. Okay? The soul's pleasure in life, it takes pleasure in everything, if it is equal. Okay? Not in the ignorance. Okay? Now, very interesting discussion about the warrior. The warrior does not feel physical pleasure in his wounds or find mental satisfaction in his defeats. That he won't. Okay? In other words, he is subject to the inequality. He is subject to pain and pleasure, he is therefore unequal. But he has a complete delight in the godhead of battle, which brings to him defeat and wounds, as well as the joy of victory, and he accepts the chances of the former and the hope of the latter as part of the mingled weft of war. The thing which the delight in him pursues. Okay? The very first Gita, the very first chapter, the warriors have gathered in the plain, and Srivad's translation of that in English is very strange. Okay? He says, holiday of a fight. Now, it took me a long time to understand what is meaning a holiday. In Sanskrit, there is no such implication at all of a holiday. Okay? But the thing is this, a holiday gives you pleasure. A Kshatriya, when gives a chance to fight, he welcomes it. It's a pleasure for him. The pleasure to, and Shraddha is given very clearly, the chances of the former and the hope of the latter. He doesn't mind both. He will not enjoy his wounds. He will not enjoy his defeat. But he welcomes the chance for the war. It's mingled with the war. So, in two places, Shraddha speaks of the holiday of a fight. Okay? Although in Sanskrit it is not there at all. So, there is a little bit of a psychological interpretation you have to do. Okay? The true warrior, the Kshatriya, takes pleasure in his profession. Even wounds bring him a joy and pride in memory. Interesting. When he gets a wound, at that time there is physical pain. But later on, when he reviews his in memory, then there is a pleasure that really, I got injured and yet I continue to fight. Okay? There is the thing which delights in him personally. Even wounds bring him a joy and a pride in memory. So joy and pride also can go. When you are proud of what you have done, there is joy, a satisfaction. In memory, complete when the pain of them has passed. Okay. Now note Sirno's very accurate description. In memory, when he is getting it, it is not that. But afterwards, when he reminds himself of it, there is pleasure.
This reminds me.
Yeah.
This reminds me of Gingy Walk. When we go for Gingy Walk, no, we have so many blisters, this, that, but finally, after when we think, then we think, yeah, we have achieved something.
Yeah,
when we
when you climb a mountain, you go to the top, you are absolutely exhausted, but you have enjoyed the trip.
yeah.
Yeah, quite right. Okay, so. In fact, Sherman is used very interesting word, mingled weft of war. Everything, all the dualities, they run into each other. They are not separate. They run into each other. Okay? In fact, later on he will tell you also that the pain also can give you pleasure. Okay, the pain of others can give you pleasure. You are a sadist if you want, and your own pain also you can enjoy. You become a masochist. Okay, so there are people who enjoy their own pain. Okay, this is also very clear. You will see very often when people are in depression, and you try to get them out of the depression. They don't want to come out of depression. Okay, they enjoy their depression. So it's very interesting. These psychological traits, which are very
in Rangana, in religion also, no, like Christianity, you have to starve yourself, or in Indian this thing, you starve yourself and you have pleasure in it. No, those rituals are there. No, you beat yourself and all that.
That's right. It is there, and particularly if you have read that Da Vinci Code. Okay?
Da Vinci Code. Yes.
Yeah, Da Vinci Code made a huge impact in the world. Okay, there the Christians are actually torturing themselves. Okay, so that is exactly what the Srim is saying the same thing in very, very philosophic and sophisticated language. He's saying the same thing. Okay. I continue with the text. Defeat keeps for him the joy and pride of indomitable resistance to a superior adversary. Look at the language and the implications behind it. Defeat keeps for him the joy and pride of indomitable resistance to a superior adversary. Even defeat sometimes you take pleasure. Oh, I lost, but I fought with great courage and I fought to the best of my ability. Therefore, I am quite happy with what I achieved. Okay? Or if he is of a baser kind, if a human being is not a true Kshatriya or a true fighter, the passions of hatred and revenge, which also have their darker and crueler pleasures. Now, their darker and crueler pleasures is what he is saying about the, as I told you, sadist and the masochist. Okay? The sadist is one who enjoys the pain of others. Okay? If you are perverse and your enemy is suffering, you enjoy it. But you also enjoy your own suffering. There are people who do that, and we had examples of that. So what's the time? Oh, it's 8:40. So okay, we have to stop. Very interesting paragraph where you can see two paragraphs. Yeah. So all the implications of equality we have been discussing. So next we'll take up with the mind recoils from pain. Okay? It's already 8:40, so I close now. Unless
Over,
there's
Rangada.
okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Dada. Thank you,
Thank you,
all of us.
Rangana.
Bonjour, Nain.
Thank you, Rangana.
Thank you all. Have a nice day and avoid pain by all means. But try to become equal to everything. Difficult. Very difficult. Not easy. Bye.
Au revoir.